So how you want to start then? Do you just want to like jump into like game one?
Yeah, let's just jump straight into the rounds. Do you want to go first, or you want me to talk about mine?
I'm fine with whatever. It's whatever you want to do.
Oh wait, hold on. On shoot,
Wait, yeah, rock paper scissors shoot, and then the winner picks.
Winner picks.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. Right.
Damn it.
You go first.
Okay. Fuck. I lost on stream twice. No, just kidding.
Spoiler alert.
No. Welcome back to the Casting Call cEDH podcast. I'm Blake.
And I'm Chase, and today we're going to do our tournament recap. Oh, man. So, last weekend, we actually went to our first event of the year.
Yep.
At Game Nights in Columbia, Tennessee. There, as soon as the door opens, we're the first people in the shop. What was your first impressions of the place we went to?
Dude, I thought it was the facility was really nice. It was really clean. I thought that it was like a super professional facility. And I liked the fact that they had those really long table mats that went across the whole table. And but the other thing that I loved was they had a huge variety of cards to choose from. They had a lot of really, really good stuff. They had inventory in the back that you could still pick from too if you wanted it. They had a ton of mats. They even had a lot of really cool custom mats that had been made. They had an actual streaming, table, which was freaking awesome. And yeah, I thought the facility was great. And now my first impression was Josh walking in there and being an absolute nuisance, but
well, and I guess I was going to kind of speak on that for a second because I think just as much as you made those points, I think one of the things that I kind of was drawn into the place was I felt like everyone that was working there for the most part was very personable and they were friendly and they weren't afraid to cut up and joke around. But Josh walking in and asking for as many copies of Morgue Thrall as he could. What did they have 200 plus copies and he was only able to get 80 something?
No. He needed 200 and something copies to fill out his binder. But they had 80 something copies.
Gotcha.
Is what it was.
And I think there was a thing of even the employees were going back and forth the odor of what if we need this card? Who else is going to buy this card?
Yeah. Well, he traded some for it because he traded a Blood Moon and a Bergie.
Yeah.
And the owner was I don't know, should we trade for it? And then one of the workers was who in the hell is going to ever buy this card? Which I might even put a disclaimer up before I put the card on screen so that way people don't just yeah.
Like a trigger warning or something.
Yeah.
That. I do think it brings up an interesting thing though, with people in our community. He has the Morgue Thrall. Leo has Collector Oof. So I think what kind of comes to mind for me and for any of you all watching, what are some cards that you all just really like to collect copies of?
Foil Etched Partners.
Yeah, you got Foil Etched Partners. I don't have a card that I personally just sit there and collect. I just look at oh, I want this and I'm gonna get it.
I don't know why. A lot of people, this was crazy to me because people used to hate the etches of cards, and then all of a sudden Magic started or Wizards started reprinting stuff, and they would do the regular printing, they would do the full art type printing, and they would do an etched printing. And now the etches are actually starting to sell. Mm-hmm. I love etched printings. And so when I saw that the partners all had etches, I remember sitting down, and again, I don't play partners in cEDH, but every casual deck I have is partners. And so I made a goal, and I was I don't want to just get online and order all of them. I want to find them at stores. So when I went and I played at Stroud, when I went and played for at Play to Win, I bought a bunch of them. Down there, I bought a couple of them. Just everywhere I go, I always try to see if I can find some. I remember one day I literally was at work and I just happened to look on Hobby Town's inventory, and I just happened to see that they had a foil etched breeches that had just came into the store. And I literally, on my lunch break, drove straight over to Hobby Town, got there, and I asked whoever was working at the time, I was like, I need this card. Like, it says it's in inventory. I need this card. And they went and searched, and they're like, oh, it must have been a mistake. And I was like, no! But yeah, I spent probably, I'm not exaggerating, I've probably spent a year and a half looking for a Togo there, and I've just never found one. And then they finally got one in. And I literally, the day it came in, I went to Clay and I was like, give me this card.
It says you have card. Give me card.
Yeah. And he did. He even, like, they hadn't put it away yet because they had just bought it. So it was in like Blake's little box of shame or whatever it is. So then I had to like go and they had to like filter through and find it, but he finally found it. And he was like, this is only like a couple cents. I was like, I don't care. I need it. And he was like, the fee on the purchase is going to be more than the card. I was like, I don't care.
You should start itching. I got tweaking now. Yes. I need it.
I'm 3 cards away from finishing my collection. I need Tormod, I need Kaidel, and I need Sakashima.
Okay.
It's technically Sakashima. That's how you would actually say it if you were Japanese. Really? Sakashima. Yeah. Because like you don't say like every I'm trying to think how to explain this. Like everything stems around from like your vowel sound. So like A, E, I, O, and U. So A, E, U, A, O. So it'd be ah, and then if you were gonna add like another letter to it, it'd be like ka, ga, ba, pa, things like that. So you wouldn't say saku, it'd be sa, ka, shi, ma. So if you're gonna say it all at once, Sakashima. Yeah, instead of Sakashima. If that makes sense.
We're Americans.
Yeah. I took 2 semesters of Japanese in college, believe it or not.
Fair enough.
Because I didn't know Spanish.
I'm awful whenever it comes to like foreign language stuff.
Really?
Yeah. It'd be a good thing to have, but I don't have the time or the patience to do it.
Yeah. I will eventually go to Japan. And the only reason that I know exactly when I would go to, because like March is my birthday. It's also the time that like the cherry blossoms bloom. Yeah. So they have like cherry blossom festivals, and they only last for like a couple of weeks because they're very like, it's a short season. So like I will go there around that time because I've got like cherry blossoms all over my arms and stuff too. So like I want to go and see the cherry blossoms.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, but I would also like to know how to read some of the street signs so I'm not just like totally lost.
Fair enough. So, well, I know we kind of got into the Japanese culture and things like that for a second, but, I guess kind of going back to the shop, I felt like overall, the shop felt like a very positive experience. It was interesting going. You brought up the inventory selection, the table space, the fact that they had their own like webcam like streaming area, which was cool. I think they were streaming through Twitch. Yeah. That day, and so I thought that was really neat and interesting to see. Even like, well, and we can talk about it later on, but the way they did things as far as like the player interviews and whatnot too. So, and honestly, like maybe with the exception of a couple people that were participating in the event, I felt like overall, like it was a pretty chill environment.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't think I had a game where I sat down and was just like, I cannot play with this person.
Yeah. There was a guy, which I don't want to just like throw anybody under the bus, but there was a guy that got mad at me during a game, and literally he was in the game with some of his buddies that like he had rolled with them. And like he got mad, and then rather than them get mad, they were like, dude, chill out. It's just a game. Like they sided with me on it, not him. So like everybody I met there was so chill. Like it was just crazy.
And wasn't there like an incident where like one of the guys there was like trying to bribe people with like cash to like draw the games and things like that? And he did it in front of the head judge.
Yeah, I think he offered. Well, I don't know if that one was a joke or if it was real, but I think he offered somebody like $5 to throw the game or something like that. I think so. But yeah, but I think he was just joking.
I don't think any of us played against him though.
Nah, not that I'm aware of.
So, but aside from that, I felt like everything else was pretty good. How did you feel going into this?
Going into it, like, what do you mean when you say like how did I feel like confidence wise? I guess.
Yeah.
Man, I've been on Xur for so long. Like I felt really good. And even, I don't want to obviously like spoil anything. We'll get into that, but I felt really good. I felt really good with Xur. I feel like Esper is just really strong right now anyways. I play it like very Esper control shell. So I feel like anytime that I go into like a game with Xur, literally the only thing I have to worry about is not the deck. It's just like my performance with the deck. And I think that definitely showed in the tournament. But yeah, I felt really confident going in there. What about you? How'd you feel with Sisay? Spoiler, he played Sisay. Sorry.
Well, I felt like I hadn't been doing well with Sisay here recently. And this past several months, I've kind of been on the fence with it. I'm changing different decks. Like I'm trying Rogsai out. I'm trying TNT, all these different things. And like, I kind of felt like Sisay was a last minute decision for me. And so I felt okay because I had been playing it at least the past couple weeks or so leading into the event. I was on a really shitty losing streak there for a little bit with it. And then I finally started getting a little bit more confidence back on it and had some really good games here locally. But I'm not going to spoil anything either for me, but I felt okay going into it. But I think that I should have trusted my intuition a little bit more and gone with something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of me going into it. Like I felt okay, but I didn't feel overly confident about it. And I think even, I forgot to say this, like I was even making some like small tweaks here and there because before we even started. And so I never really saw if those things came up. One of my changes I made, I put Deathrite Shaman back in. And there was a game where it was actually really beneficial. And that was in my second round. So we can kind of go into that one here in a second. So
yeah. So how you want to start then? Do you just want to like jump into like game one?
Yeah, let's just jump straight into the rounds. Do you want to go first or you want me to talk about mine?
I'm fine with whatever. It's whatever you want to do.
Oh wait, hold on shoot.
Wait, yeah, rock paper scissors shoot, and then the winner
picks. Winner picks.
Okay, that's fair.
All right.
Damn it.
You go first.
Okay. Fuck. I lost on stream twice. No, just kidding.
Spoiler alert.
No, yeah, it's good. I control the edits, but
you just Photoshop a rock.
And then it just really shitty sound over like, I choose to go first. Okay. No, man. So yeah, my first game, I actually ended up, which I know you don't know what this feels like. I ended up in seat 1. Ended up in seat 2. Timna Halana ended up in seat 3, which is like a weird Abzan list. And then Malcolm Vile was seat 4. I actually played that guy twice in that tournament, which was very interesting. Yeah. But yeah, so basically what happened in that game was like I started out trying to mulligan down or like I was mulligan trying to obviously like find some kind of a value engine. And I couldn't find a value engine in like my first couple of hands. And I think it was my 5th. I went down to 5. And I didn't want to go much farther than that just because, again, like Esper already has a hard time like making mana. And maybe let's say like I get somehow like a land and then like an Esper Sentinel or something like that. But I didn't want to go down like too far. And I remember like I kept a hand that had like some lands in it. I think I had like 2 lands, a Felwar Stone. It was like a Mirror Maid, and I want to say I had, what else did I have? Ranger Captain, maybe. I think that was right. Ranger Captain of Eos. And then, so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'll keep the hand. If somebody, and like this again was terrible thought, but I was like, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if I, try to go early, like I'm going to go first, so I'm at least going to get to like drop a land, turn, I don't know what I'm going to draw into, but like at least if I draw into some interaction, I can hold up mana for the interaction. Turn 2, like worst case scenario, like again, I'll play another land, I'll cast the Felwar Stone, and I've still hopefully got interaction. And then for like the later part of the game, I can either go like Ranger Captain and go get Esper Sentinel, or I can like take and copy somebody's like Rhystic Study or Fish with the Mirror Maid. So it was a little more reliant on what my opponents were going to do, but I felt like I had some options. And then I remember drawing for turn, I drew like a Gilded Drake. And so like I was like, okay, you know, like this isn't terrible. So like I played a land, passed, was just trying to, you know, figure out like what to do from there. Because again, I didn't want to mulligan too low. And then Kennen has just like a very Kennen start, you know, I mean, typical Kennen play. The Timna Halana player, I think, just had like a very explosive start, like lots of mana. And then the Malcolm Vile player had not, like, they didn't really do much. Same thing. There was just like a very kind of like slow start because I think they mulliganed down kind of low. And then it got back to my turn. I went and I did like the same thing. I played my land. Or no, actually, I take that back. I do remember what happened. This was so stupid. I don't know why I did this. The person that was playing Timna Halana, they had dropped an Esper Sentinel. I do remember this now. So they dropped an Esper Sentinel, and I decided I was going to Drake the Esper Sentinel because I was like, you know what?
What?
Like, yeah, it sounds stupid, and I'm disappointed to say this, but I did take it because I was sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm going into like I don't have any interaction. I don't have anything in my hand, anyways. You know, I guess I could bluff it, but like I just didn't have anything, and there was nothing else I was going to be doing right there. Like there was nothing else on the table to steal. The guy didn't have Kennen down yet, so like I couldn't have taken Kennen. Like there was just really nothing else to do. So like I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take this. Kennen's gonna play some, you know, rocks or something. Like I'll get some draws. The Timna Halana player, maybe they'll draw some, you know, play some rocks. I'm assuming the other person can play some rocks. So like I was like, you know what? Maybe it'll just get me back into it somehow. So like I stole the Esper Sentinel, and sure enough, I did get like it got me a lot of draws that game. So like it was at least nice to have. But yeah, then all of a sudden out of nowhere, and again, it wouldn't have mattered because I didn't have any interaction to begin with. But turn 2, Kennen just goes like drops the Kennen Basalt, and I'm like, oh fuck. And then they start to make like infinite mana, so then they just start going crazy. But I did get the draw off the Basalt Monolith. And it looked like they were about to go crazy, but then they didn't have any follow-up play, so they just had to pass.
Gotcha.
Timna Halana actually started to present a win on their turn, and because they dropped like a survival of the fittest and started to do some crazy stuff. And thank God the Kennen had a endurance, and so they were able to like send their whole graveyard back to the bottom. And they were like, okay, well, I'll just set up for like another thing on my turn, you know. So they while they were doing, you know, on the survival, I got another draw, thank God. Malcolm Vile's still doing nothing on this game. So,
yeah.
You know, they're just like, whatever. They're like, I'll just cast Malcolm. And I'm like, really tap out to cast Malcolm. I'm like, okay. And then it comes back to me again, and I'm trying to figure out like what we're going to do, because I asked the other person, I was like, do you have any way to like stop what he's about to do? And they were like, no, there's nothing. And I'm just looking at my hand, and I was like, there's literally, I think I had, the only option I had in my hand was like, I think like Windfall. Like it was just, there wasn't really anything good.
Yeah.
And thinking back now, and again, I wish I would have thought through this a little bit more, but I could have, I didn't have enough mana to do all of this, but like I thought about this like after the fact. Technically, I could have, if I had enough mana, I could have like used the Mirror Maid to go and like copy the survival, and then I could have like pitched it to maybe get like a Drannith or something, just like slow everything down or like stop something. But again, I just didn't have the mana for that. So I just decided, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to like, you know, his whole plan is obviously fill up his graveyard, but he has to do it all on his turn. He can't do it at instant speed. So he had been throwing stuff back so that he could get the cards that he was needing back to his hand anyways. So I ended up casting Windfall and made everybody pitch and then draw. And then I drew into a Mockingbird, and I actually copied, which it was a last minute edit or add, and I copied the Endurance to then get everything shuffled back, because I did draw into some 0 rocks, but I got everything shuffled back in again, and he didn't have any creatures in hand to do the survival stuff.
Yeah.
So then Kennen goes, doesn't really do anything on his turn, same thing. Timna Halana just doesn't really have anything, kind of dirtles, comes back to Malcolm, nothing, comes back to me, and I don't have any like other like really good plays. So I'm like, okay, I'll just cast Zer and try to set up for what's going to come next.
Right.
And then Kennen, I don't know what happened, but like I think he put some activations on the stack, and I think he hit a Hullbreaker Horror, and that just totally changed everything. Like he had like the Mamber or whatever, and like just started going crazy, made infinite mana, and then just did Kennen things and won. So like, again, there was nothing we could have done to like stop it at that point, but yeah, it was just, it felt like a very, I felt like I had all these nerves going into like that very first game for some reason, even though I did feel confident. And so it just felt like a game where like I made some really stupid plays and just ended up regretting it in the end and losing. I wish I would have like held on to the Drake and like taken the Ken in, or I wish I would have done some like other plays rather than just be greedy as hell and be like, I'm going to take an Esper Sentinel.
Right.
And so again, like it was just so stupid. But yeah, so like I definitely made some boneheaded plays in that one. And I felt like that was like totally my game to lose at that point. I was like, I deserved that. But yeah. Well, how did your game one go?
So my game one, I am sitting at a table in seat one is a Yarok player, so he's playing Sultai colors. Seat two is Winota, seat three is Kennen, and seat four is me on Sisei. And that is going to be a theme of this event, is me sitting at seats 3 and 4 pretty consistently within these games. So I already didn't feel great going into it based on seat order there. And then I got my first 7 and I was like, that's okay, but I'm not really doing anything. It's not advancing me because I'm in seat 4 at a table where I don't really know what this player is doing. I know what Winota is going to do as far as stacks out the board, and I know what Kennen is going to do, because that is also another theme of this whole event, is that this place was swarming with Kennens, but that is for our, we'll talk about that as the rounds go on. Eventually I had to go down to 5, sitting in seat 4. And I think I kept a hand of a Command Tower, a Mystic Remora, and a Noble Hierarch, a Kennen, and I think a Vamp Tutor. And so I was just like, okay, I think that this is going to be slow enough. I don't think I cast Fish on 1, and I didn't. I went with the Dork to try and get more mana. And then I'm like, okay, if I get Dork on 1, Kennen on 2, and I ended up, I think I did Sisei on curve. So on turn 3, I was able to cast her. So I waited a little bit to cast the Fish. And I think that ended up being an okay call, because 2 rule of law effects came down like within the first turn or 2 from the Winota player. The Yarok player, this was his first event, like cEDH, like he had said he had been playing for a year or 2, but this was his first ever event that he was playing in. And I thought that was pretty cool, because one, I don't really know what Yarok was trying to do or what his deck was doing, but I think that he knew at least enough going in game plan wise, and he was in decent enough colors. He could just do Thassa's Oracle and do things like that. But also being able to sit seat 1 first round, your first event, I'm sure he felt pretty nervous, but I think it was cool that he got the experience of being able to do that. I didn't catch up with him later on throughout the rounds. The Winota player was probably the friendliest person that was at that whole event. Every single time we played a round, he checked in with us. And we talked about rounds, and so he was cool. Kennen player, very intelligent, very smart, knew what they were doing with the deck, and they kind of controlled the game for the most part. The Winota player was getting out of hand, making, channeling one of his lands to make spirits that have haste, and then swinging and getting really good flips off the top. One of the flips he got in on his turn, it was Combat Celebrant, and whatever the other creature he had where he could make infinite Combat Celebrants and just swing out. But the Kennen player was keeping him at bay. So pretty early on, Kennen was able to establish a decent board presence, had ramped in turn 1, turn 2, they slammed down a Ristic Study. Turn 3, I think they cast a Mana Vault and had a bunch of open mana, and they had already tutored for something. I forgot what they had tutored for. But we found out on my turn, because I went to pass the turn and he slammed down, he flashed in a Hullbreaker Horror on my turn in an effort to try to stop whatever the Winota player was putting on board, whether it be Winota, the stacks pieces. He had gotten down Magus of the Moon at one point, so I was almost completely locked out of this game the whole time through stacks and what Kennen was doing. But the Kennen player was the only one kind of keeping the game going. But you can see it slowly start to turn because I think it got back around to the Kinnon's player, and he was able to cast a Clever Impersonator copying Hullbreaker Horror. So now he has 2 Hullbreaker Horrors, and he's bouncing the Winota player's board presence, but now Kinnon's becoming an issue. I had already kind of put, I think on like turn 4 or 5, maybe because of the rule law effects, I put Mystic Remora down just to see if I either A, draw into interaction, or B, draw into something that can kind of help with the Kinnon player, but also not try to throw the game at this point. And I drew into Nicol Bolas, I drew into Iorith. I think my only interaction I drew into was a Pact of Negation. And like at one point, the Winota player is trying to slam down a Grand Abolisher, and Kinnon player is going, do you have anything? And I'm like, this is the only thing I have, and I don't have enough mana to actually survive the upkeep. And he goes, if you cast it now, I will promise I'll counter it. He showed me a Fierce Guardianship that he had in hand, and he's like, we gotta deal with these stacks pieces. And so fortunately they were very respectful, and they did follow through on that, and to where I didn't lose the game. So like I think that goes a long way in some of these games, and is a skill that a lot of people don't think of whenever not just politicking, but also upholding that end of things. But then when it's time to shift gears and try to go into your game plan to win, knowing when the right time to do that is too. So all of that being said, we're facing a Winota player who's stacking out the board, almost kills the Kinnon player through combat damage.
Wow. Yeah.
He actually did not swing at me for most of it. And I think that's because even though I had a Ignoble Hierarch Kinnon and Sisay out, Sisay being a 4/4, he didn't want to swing Winota my way, obviously. I think Sisay was big enough that I could have chump blocked just about anything he swings, and it takes out part of his board presence, but he knew he had to swing at the Kinnon player. So in my head, I'm trying to play this game where it's like, I have to stall out, I have to depend on both of them, and be able to know when my time to either interact or when to go is. I just never got that window of opportunity. I think that in my last turn, I had either enough mana that I could have held up for an Urtai and be able to flash it in to either counter or kill something, or the One Ring. And I chose the One Ring because I was looking at the board presence from the Winota player. I was like, I don't think that he's coming at me, but if I don't cast the One Ring here, there's a chance that he wins because he already had the infinite combo on board. If the Kinnon player stops him and proceeds to try and go off, he's going to have to fight through my One Ring. And that's what eventually ended up happening. So I cast the One Ring. I did get a card draw because I think I had to try to draw into interaction to still try and bounce pieces, use the Kinnon player to bounce pieces off of the Winota board state. And we just didn't get there with that. But eventually, whenever it did come back around to Winota, he was stopped. Kinnon player proceeds to pop off at that point in time, bounces all our stuff back, and he did some loop, and I forgot exactly what it was. It wasn't like the Coliseum loop or anything like that, but he did do a loop to be able to get through my One Ring. And so Kinnon took round 1 of my first round.
Yeah, Kinnon took round 1 of mine too, which is crazy. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, man. It was really weird. It was like almost. I know it sounds so silly, but I feel like in a regular setting, like I'm very smart with Xur, and then for some reason, man, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but like sometimes I just get into tournament settings and immediately it's like it just falls apart. Like you start overthinking everything, and then I just make bad choices. And I literally told myself after that first game, I was like, we're not going to do that again. We're not playing stupid. I'm not tapping out. Even if I have to, like, you know what I mean? I will not tap out with Xur. Like, even if I was like, oh, I've got 4 mana and I could cast Xur right now, it'd be nice to get Necropotence next turn. I will not do it. Like, right. I will wait until I'm able to hold up mana to do stuff. Like, it does not matter. So, and I made that a golden rule forever ago with me. And like, I just didn't, I don't know what happened in that first game. It's like I lost my damn mind and I just decided to like play like an idiot. And not to mention, like, I don't know that I would have won that game, but I felt like it wasn't the fact that I lost the game that bothered me. It was just the fact that I played so stupid and like got a little bit crazy with some of the decisions I made. But then after that, I was like, no, we're cleaning this up.
Yeah.
And the rest of the games, I definitely feel like I cleaned it up and I played more like how I play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Like the first round for me, first and foremost, I always go through like first round jitters. So like I'm always like slightly kind of shaking or like a little bit on edge, but I didn't feel that as much now that I've kind of gotten used to playing in more and more events. But going into that round, and especially having, again, it was kind of the seat order, having to come all down to 5, I was like, I can't let this happen again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it happened several times to me throughout the course of this event. But like, I don't know if, like our first video we did, and I said I wanted to try to really learn what my deficits are in the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if this makes sense or not, but like not just in this round, but maybe even in some of these other rounds. Like I feel like mulliganing is typically an issue that all players have. And I don't know if it's fair to say that maybe there were times throughout this round I mulliganed too aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that honestly is kind of overshadowed by the idea of like, you need to mulligan, you need to, make sure you're aware of where you are, who you're playing against. Like you need to, be aggressive in that manner that, you want to sculpt a good hand to be sitting there competitively with the table. But throughout the course of the day, I think that mindset is what kind of put me back quite a bit. Obviously there were some shit hands and I could not keep them, and I'll talk about a couple of those later on. But I think that was potentially something that kind of held me back here. And then I just was not getting rewarded for it whatsoever on the day. So that was my thoughts on round 1 there. Let's go on to round 2.
Yeah.
You want me to start it off this time since you lost the rock, paper, scissors and had to go first?
Well, I guess we can just keep it back and forth if you want to do that. That way it just looks good for them.
We could do it one way or another. No matter.
But yeah, man. So like game 2 for me, so it was, I actually ended up playing the same Malcolm Vile player. He was seat 1. TNT was in seat 2. I was in seat 3. And then Obnixilis, the Captain Kingpin, he was in seat 4. Although this guy was playing Robert Nixilis, and that was what he called it, Robert Nixilis.
He called it Robert Nixilis?
Robert Nixilis. That was just what the name of his deck was, Robert Nixilis. And I thought that was so funny. He actually played Leo in their first game. Yeah. And beat Leo in like their game 1. Yeah. And so Leo, whenever I went to play in my game 2, he was like, yeah, you got to watch out for him. Like he's, basically telling me that he was really good. And actually the funny thing in their game 1 was, I forgot how it came up. Oh, is it Wandering Archaic that makes it copy unless you pay? Yes. Yes. So Leo had an opportunity to stop the Obnix player's win, and the guy had cast Gamble. Well, when he gambled, he asked him, he's like, do you want to pay 2 or do I get to copy it? And the guy was like, no, you can copy it. So Leo goes to get, I think it was like Endurance to
I remember
Leo
talking about this one.
And he goes and gets it. And because he had 6 cards in hand, and because he didn't technically have to cast Gamble, he just copied it. So he added a 7th card to hand, shuffles it up, and he had like 3 cards to pitch to Endurance anyway. So he lays his cards out and lets the Obnixilis player pick, and the guy picks the card that he went and got. And he was like, it really is the Red Entomb. This is bullshit. He said I had 7 cards in hand, and I fucking picked the card. They picked the card that I needed. So it was hilarious, man. But so I ended up playing that guy. And again, this is kind of one of those games where like, I just decided I was going to step back. I was going to play Esper Control. That was just what I was going to do. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to rely on just like, I don't ever try to explode out anyways with Zuri. Like I wasn't trying to do anything crazy there. I was just going to like be patient, again, play Esper Control. Didn't even know if I'd cast Zur that game. And I don't believe I did, in all honesty. So I didn't cast Zur that game. Yeah. Now that I was thinking about it, we go in. Malcolm Vile actually has I can't even remember what I mulliganed down to, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I'm trying to think. I believe I kept, I honestly, I can't remember what it was that I kept. I remember I got to like a very early like value piece, like a value engine. But Malcolm Vile actually opens up with a Vexing Bauble, like turn one, just turn one Vexing Bauble, and it immediately shut down Ob Nixilis, like it messed him up pretty bad. And then it slowed down the TNT player just a little bit, but not much. It did not affect my turn. So like I just played my land. I think I dropped what did I do after that? Actually, I don't even think I dropped anything. I think I just was still going to play like control basically. Like I had plenty of interaction in my hand.
Right.
So then I like passed. Ob Nixilis could not really do much because he had a handful of 0 rocks. It goes back to Malcolm Vile. This person was like in control for a lot of the game, like being, very proactive with like ramping with mana, hitting people and making treasures off of Malcolm. Was like doing what he needed to be doing, and it was really good. And then all of a sudden, it came to a point to where the TNT player was able to. He had Devoted Druid out and killed his own Devoted Druid to make mana, and used it to activate something. I can't remember what the card was off the top of my head, but to basically go get Hazels. It was one of the ones where like you sack something to go get you sack it, and then you go and get some the creature that's like however much mana you paid into it plus a certain amount.
Does it go directly on the battlefield, or
Yeah.
So probably like an Eldritch?
I think
Evolution
so. That sounds right. That sounds right. And I noticed, like, just looking at the board, that they didn't have any blue mana left on the board, but so they were just going to be able to make like basically infinite green, but they had no blue mana.
And no way to probably cast Thrasios then.
Well, they already had Thrasios on the board,
Okay.
So they had cast that, and I couldn't counter the card, but I was sitting there looking, and I was like, okay, if I can deal with Thrasios, you can't win right now. So I killed Thrasios. I took the time, just like I went ahead and just addressed it, killed the Thrasios. And I knew that if it got back to their turn, they were going to win. So it comes to my turn. I ended up dropping, I think, a Necropotence, and like an absolute goon, forgot Ob Nixilis was on the table. So I'm like looking at Necro, and I'm like getting ready to pay my life into it. And then I kind of turn and look, and I see Ob Nixilis on the board, and I said, oh no. I was like, what did I do, man? So like I was playing smart the whole game until right then. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're an idiot right now. So then I was like, okay, if I pump a ton into this, like I'm probably going to hand this to the Ob Nix player. So I actually was wanting to save this for potentially later. I had the Touch the Spirit Realm, so channeling. So I was like, okay, how do I want to go about this? Because I was essentially going to use it to address the Hazel's issue over there. And so I was like, okay, well, I can either sit here and basically do nothing right now, or I can at least like try and see if I can get something going. So I ended up channeling the Touch to get rid of the Ob Nix just until the end of turn. And then I pumped a bunch of life into it because I knew that if it got back to the TNT player, they were going to win anyways. Pumped a bunch of life into it, was able to fill my hand up by a lot. Well, obviously into exile. End step, Ob Nix comes back. I get my cards, and I'm looking, and I'm like sculpting a hand to address what's about to happen over there. And then I'm looking, and I also had like Thassa in hand. So I'm like, okay, cool. I've got options here.
Right.
So I just decide, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just like let you guys do your thing. Go ahead. Like I passed to Ob Nixilis. Doesn't really get to do much. Same thing. So nothing happens. Gets to Malcolm Vile. Vexing Bauble is still out on the table, which sucks. And he I can't remember how the information came up, but I didn't want them to know that I could address what was happening over there because I obviously didn't want to spend my mana. So I just was like, how are we going to deal with this? Because if it gets to his turn, he wins. And the one guy's like, I'm not really sure. And so Ob Nix was just very honest. He was like, I have nothing. Like, I'm out. So he just like shows his hand. He's like, I don't have anything. And I'm like, oh, okay, dang. And I do remember there was one relevant thing. He had like a deflecting swat in his hand. So like if the bauble was gone, then obviously like, that would have mattered. So then it gets to, I look at the other guy, the Malcolm Vile player, and I'm like, hey man, like I literally like, how are we going to deal with this? And he won't show me his hand, but he's like, I think we're good. And so I remember I had silence in hand. So I was actually going to silence on the person's upkeep so they couldn't at least cast Thrasios.
Yeah.
So that it would get back to my turn. I could like try to do some stuff. And by this point, I had a heuristic study. I kind of skipped some stuff. I know. I'm sorry. So then, for some reason, the guy just decides, like, it gets to the upkeep, and I ask him just like blatantly, I'm like, do you have anything for this? And he's like, well, yeah, I've got some stuff that I can do. And I think he just decides, he was like, I can overload Cyclonic Rift. And so rather than cast the silence, I'm like, yeah, no, that sounds like what you're gonna have to do, or else we just lose right here. So he has 8 mana, and he just decides to spend 7 of it to overload the Psych Rift, bounces everything to hand. And this is the moment where the player that was on TNT, that was the one person that was like during the whole tournament, just like got really mad. And he was like, everybody's like, targeting me. And I was like, and then even his buddy, the Obnix guy was actually his buddy. And he was like, how is it targeting you? He's like, boo-hoo, they didn't let me win. Like, shut up. And so the guy got mad. But so he was like, dude, chill out. Like, relax. Yeah. It's just a game. We're having fun. So the guy overloads Psych Rift. The guy does whatever he can to like reestablish his board as best he can, and then passes to me. Well, during the Psych Rift, I did not have a win on my turn. So I was like, I'm going to have to try and string something together. Well, when the guy cast Psych Rift, he didn't obviously want to tap out to pay for the heuristic. So I drew for turn, like drew because of it, and I drew Consult. So I had the win at that point, and I said, this is going to be either, like, I'm going to win here, but, like, this is not going to be good because this guy's going to get very mad. So I was looking at my hand. I didn't have any counter magic, but I at least knew that, like, he had, like, 1 mana. So, like, he had to address, like, basically the first thing that I did. So I attempted to cast Silence just immediately, and he countered it, but he cracked his last treasure to do it. And I just kind of looked at him while it was on the stack, and I was like, do you have any more mana? And he was like, no. And I just kind of looked, and I was like, okay. And I looked at the other guy that was playing the TNT, and I was like, do you have any open mana? And he was like, no. And I knew that the Obnix player had nothing because I'd just seen his hand. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's a Consult. Like, I win. And I got there because of that. And then that proceeded to obviously make the TNT player like very upset. But
he's like, you sandbagging motherfucker.
Yeah. And I literally said, afterwards I said, I was like, I didn't have the win until he cast the Psych Rift, and then I drew into the consultation.
Oh my God.
And that made things way worse. That did not smooth things over.
But that is why that combo is so strong, because it just comes out of nowhere.
It's insanity, yeah. But so like I at least like played more control like I was supposed to in that game. I probably didn't play as good as I should have in that game, and I did skip some stuff as I was explaining things. That was my fault. But because like I'm just struggling to remember like everything that happened. But I at least played more like what I should play like. It wasn't. It still didn't feel like a normal game that we would just be playing, obviously, like sitting at Hobbytown or like hanging out. But it felt more like how I should have played. So I was at least okay with the performance. And obviously I got a win. So like of course I'm okay with that. But yeah, so like that was basically how my round 2 went. It was very just chaotic. And then it happened. And then I'll leave this part out. Like they won't see this. But it made me I was dying so bad. Because like afterwards I told Leo, and Leo was like, and like literally did that. He was like, fucking, how dare you not let me win? And he was like, who the fuck did that? And then I look, and it was the guy. And like I told him about this. I was telling him the story about it. And he was like, you didn't let me win. You're targeting me. And then he was like, who even did that? And then I just like point, and the guy's like sitting right across the table from Leo.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Leo just looked at me and he goes, fuck it, I said what I said.
Oh man, that's awesome. I don't think that needs to be cut. I think that needs to
just leave that shit in there.
No.
How did your game 2 go?
Oh, so my game 2. Well, okay, so that was actually one of my better rounds. Okay. I felt like. Actually, I would say that's probably my best round that I had of the event. So in seat 1 is Kennen, and then there's a Rog side player in seat 2, me in seat 3, and a Crick at seat 4. So I'm literally between a Rog in a hard place on this one. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I need to keep interaction. I needed to do something, and I kept a decent hand. I think I had to go to 6, and but part of the reason I was very careful on what I was picking is because, at first at least, is because the Kennen player I think he keeps his first 7, and he goes, "This is no land hand, but I want to play greedy." Playing Kennen. And I'm like, okay. So with that in mind, I'm like, he has no interaction. There's a Rog side player sitting here in front of me. I'm going to do what I'm going to try to do to not have a game like I did the first round. And then there's Crick, where I'm just like, we've played against Crick enough where we know what to kind of expect. And so I'm kind of cautious of it a little bit at this point. So I shit you not. The Kennen player, he's on the play, doesn't even draw a land, drops a bunch of rocks and plays Kennen on 1. And I'm like, well, okay, he's trying to go for it. The Rog side player, I don't think he even cast Rograk on turn 1. I think he literally just dropped like a Soul Ring and then passed. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And there were some other interesting plays that he kind of made throughout the event. So on mine, I think that I was able to drop a couple pieces of mana, like maybe it was like land, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Noble Hierarch, pass. So I'm like, I'm feeling okay. And I know I had a Kennen and a Dahada in hand as well. Crick, I think he plays land pass. Gets back to Kennen. He still doesn't have a land, but I don't even know if he was able to put an activation on the stack. Like maybe he put a land into play and then maybe like a dork or something. I don't remember exactly what he did throughout some of his turns, but he doesn't do much passes. The Rog side player goes, he casts Rograk finally. He plays a land, he tutors, and like I'm thinking, okay, are we going to will here? Are we going to try to go off really early? What are we going to do? And then he passes. I'm like, oh, okay. So on my turn 2, I'm actually able to cast, I think I was able to actually get Kennen. I was able to get Kennen on board and like do something else. I'm set up. I'm in a good spot. Like I almost have enough mana. Like if I wanted to put a Kennen activation and like try to flip some stuff, I could. And what I think is also important to note, I had a Mental Misstep and a Fierce Guardianship in hand too. So I have a Dahada and those 2 counter spells. I'm like, okay, cool. Gets to the Crick player. I think he literally just casts Crick and he's like, I don't have anything else to follow it up. So he passes. Kennen player still doesn't really do anything. He's got like 2 cards in hand at this point. He doesn't really do anything. He passes. I think maybe literally at one point he like is able to like tutor for a land or something like that. The Rog side player, oh, I remember. It wasn't a Noble Hierarch. It was the Deathrite Shaman, and that's what was helping me because he kept pitching like a mana confluence and some of his lands into the graveyard, and like I was able to get more mana based off of that. Now I did at some point get a Noble Hierarch down, but as the Deathrite Shaman I decided to put in that day, and I was able to kind of keep him off of like, you know, those extra cards if he's trying to do a little bit of a breach line or things like that. So Deathrite came into play really good that game for me, and then I was still able to kind of filter off of my own grave. It just kind of sucked because I had a Kennen that kept a no land hand, so it doesn't help with the Deathrite whatsoever. And then Crick was, I don't remember if he was playing fetches or at all or not. So I was like only dependent on this Rock side player. He casts the it's a background. He casts a background that I think whenever a commander or creature you control connects, you make a treasure or 2 treasures. I'm like, I've never seen this in Rog side. He swings it like the Crick player with Rograk, and like the dude just takes it and he gets his treasures. I'm like,
wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
What does the card do?
Whenever like a commander you control connects, you make a treasure or 2 treasures or something like that.
Does it have to deal damage?
I don't think so. So he just made like 2 free treasures like
That's
like
interesting.
it was nothing. I'd never seen it in a rogue rack build before, and then that's the moment I knew, like, okay, I'm not as worried about this one. So it gets into my turn, and so I have like a couple dorks, rocks. I'm able to cast Dahada. And then this is where it gets a little bit crazy, because this is the turn. I think this is turn 4 for me, and this is where I was presenting a win. So I cast Dahada, and no, hold up, I'm thinking. I may have cast the Dahada a turn earlier, so it was like turn 4 or 5. I was presenting a win, so I cast the Dahada, and the only card I kept whenever she resolved, and I put the activation where you mill 4 or reveal the top 4. You can put any legendaries in your hand. I also had a Lotus Petal in hand, so I got a Mox Amber off of the pile. I kept it because I was like, okay, maybe rather than trying to get 4 treasures, if they see that I'm going for another rock and they don't know I have the Lotus Petal in hand, maybe I'm a little bit safer here. So I make 3 treasures, and I'm able to crack those, and like here in a little bit, I attempt to cast cEDH. So this is where I got the bad judge call. So I cast cEDH, and Crick doesn't have a response. Cannon player in response casts into the Flood Maw, targeting Kennen here, I think. And then in response, I cast Mental Misstep. Or no. Sorry, that's completely wrong. I let it go through. They do something to try to bounce my... No, that's what it is. Rogue side player snaps Kennen back to my hand. I let it go through. He untaps 2 lands. So cEDH comes down, and then I cast the Mox Amber that they just saw. And before Kennen had gone, I had already cracked my treasures, so I had 6 mana floating, and I had made Grixis mana, I think. And so I'm forgetting a lot of details.
No, you're okay.
But
we both are. It's been a week.
Yeah, and this week has been a week.
It's been a hell of a week.
But so I have 6 floating mana. cEDH comes down. I cast the Mox Amber. They're okay with that. I cast the Lotus Petal that they don't know of, and they're going, oh fuck, he's got 2 activations. And that's whenever the Kennen player does the Into the Flood Maw, trying to target cEDH before that Lotus Petal comes down. And so I cast Mental Misstep, targeting the Into the Flood Maw. Crick doesn't have a response. Kennen doesn't have a response. The Rogue side player, he is able to cast Deflecting Swat for free because he has Rogue Rack still out. And he attempts to redirect the target of Mental Misstep back to Mental Misstep.
Yeah.
And the head judge is standing right there. And I look at him, I'm like, I don't think that's right. And the head judge looks at me and goes, it's a legal target because it's on the stack.
Yeah,
and what did we find out in a Google search right after the event?
Yeah, spells can't target themselves. Well, and it's the same way. Like if somebody were to, like, let's say you like Force of Will, and then somebody says Deflecting Swat, you can't put the Force of Will back to the
Force of Will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead, you change it to the deflecting Swat.
Right.
But then what happens is Deflecting Swat resolves, then the Force of Will fizzles. That's normally how those go. Like, you know what I mean? Like the spell would then fizzle because the target is now gone. Yeah. But yeah, it's not that you make it target itself and it disappears from the stack. So yeah,
So I got super fucked on the judge call because if that had not been the case, I would have at least been able to put another activation on the stack with cEDH being a big 5/5, and then I think there is a way for me to like untap some stuff, be able to get additional like mana, and like kind of go from there.
Well, I think you would have already had the Dahada on the table, right?
Yeah, and that's what made cEDH the 5/5.
Yeah, and then
I was okay with the Kennen getting bounced at that point because I was wanting to protect the cEDH and get an activation.
Could you have just bounced her? I guess like Amanatu bounced her, done some more.
Yeah, like I probably would have presented a line that way.
Yeah.
But because of that judge call, I wasn't able to. So I had to shift gears. And I think I was able to recast cEDH, recast
Kennen.
And so I just let my board present be built back up. And so that way I can hopefully attempt to go at it again on my next turn. And I pass turn. Only card in hand is the Fierce Guardianship. Now, Rogside didn't have anything after this. And the Kennen player didn't have anything after this. So I was the only person left at the table holding up interaction. And that's the reason I didn't use it to try to counter the deflecting SWAT or anything like that. I was like, okay, if they're going to stop my win attempt here, someone's going to have to stop the next. And so going into the Crick player's turn, he puts some rocks down, I think, and then he attempts to cast a Dark Ritual, I think, and Beseech the Mirror Bargained. And then this is the point where I'm like, do you have anything? No. Do you have anything? No. This is what I have.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that if I don't interact here, he wins.
Yeah.
And so I countered the Beseech. Later I found out the Crick player was like, that was the right move because what I was going for, the Fierce wouldn't have been able to stop it and I would have won. So it shuts him out. And then we go into the Kennen player's turn. And I knew what he had in hand. After casting into the Flood Maw, the only thing he had left was a Mox Diamond. Okay, and he still had a bunch of rocks on board. During his upkeep, or actually his main phase, he draws a card. He does a Kennen flip. It's a Hull Breaker. He slams the Mox Diamond down, pitching a Beseiju, which was the card he drew for the turn, and proceeds to go off that way.
Sometimes it happens, man.
That sucks. And then later he came back to me and he goes, thank you for being the first one to try to present a win. And I was just like, why? So that was probably my best round, but I genuinely think that the judge call is what really screwed me on that. And then going back to that idea of like, okay, what can I learn from this? What is it that I am missing? And I think it's that I was really afraid to challenge it more. You know, he had opened up in the beginning of the day, and this is something we kind of forgot to talk about whenever they were doing the announcements and whatnot. Like, he made the statement, like, whatever his final call was, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so in my head, I'm going, he's not going to let me even dispute this, so I'm just going to keep playing the game and try to survive till my next turn. But I think that if I had gone with my judgment and had just gone, I know that's not right, I need you to look that up and I'm challenging your call, I think that game for me would have ended up way different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it happens. It sucks too that, yeah. It's just part of it. It sucks. I know. I mean, I didn't have that happen to me, but one of the guys has had that happen where, because like I said, like with Xur, for instance, again, like when you swing and you go get like an aura, it skips like whatever the enchantment is that you're grabbing, it skips the stack. So like, it just comes straight into play. Well, the same thing with like auras. If they come straight into play, they don't target. They just come straight down attached to whatever the thing is. So like Steel Enchantment will come down just like directly attached to like Rhystic Study, for instance.
Right.
Or Fish or whatever other, survival, if it, whatever it is you're wanting. So like it comes down just attached to it. And that's how it gets through like Shroud and other stuff. That's why like in casual builds, you can play things like Diplomatic Immunity on Xur and give him Shroud. So like the Diplomatic Immunity itself has Shroud. He has Shroud. And then you can still swing with Xur, and then before the damage is dealt, you can go and like get another aura that will boost his attack, and then it comes into play just directly attached to him, so you get past Shroud. So like it's just a weird way that it works with the stack. Like it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Now obviously, like, and I've fucked this up even against you one time where an enchantment came down and it says when it enters the battlefield. Now obviously when it hits, then that part of the effect would activate. But if there's no like enter the battlefield, like again with auras, like a regular enchantment, it would. But with auras, They just come in attached to the thing. So it does get around that kind of stuff. But yeah, like a guy swung and got something like that, and it came down, and somebody tried to deflecting SWAT the target, and a judge was like, "Yeah, no, he can. It's because it's like it's targeting the thing," and he was like, "No." And literally, if you look up Xur and the rulings for Xur, it is like the only ruling for Xur is that the thing does not use the stack. Like his ability when you swing uses the stack, but after that, it's done.
Right,
and
because I'm guessing because the enchantment entering is part of the resolution of the ability.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's you can't interact at that point. And again, like I said, like now again, let's say for instance, I got Touch the Spirit Realm and it comes in. It says when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature or artifact. That ability then enters the stack. But if an aura comes down, it comes down attached to a thing. So you basically you don't select the thing, if that makes sense. Like it just comes down equipped to the thing. So like for instance, if another person's creature has Shroud, I can just have the thing come in attached to their thing, and I don't have to like,
Gotcha.
you know what I mean? But yeah, and that happened to him one time where like he went to go do that, and the judge was like, and he just pulled up the ruling, and he's like, look, like this is the only ruling for Xur. Like this is if you look up his thing, this is the only ruling that even is relevant to him. Like here,
Right.
And the guy was like, no, what I said, you know, and I think that's crazy. Like they're showing you, and so you never know, man. He could have changed his mind, but he could also not have. It just sucks. I know it sucks.
I mean, he seemed nice enough that he probably could have changed it, but I was still in the mindset of like, he's not going to. Like, he literally just watched the interaction happen. He's probably not going to change his mind here. But it is a thing of, I wish that I would have challenged that, because I think I could have won on that turn, or at least set myself up farther ahead in a way that I could deal with whatever threat was about to come my way, and then come back to my turn and pop off again.
Yeah.
So... Yep, that was my round 2.
There you go. Yeah, my game 3 was probably like the most sad that I've been with any, like, just it sucked. I was so upset. Well, I take that back. Actually, game 4, we'll go into that later. But game 3, I was very upset. So like, I go and I just like, I'm shuffling. I shuffle up and I draw my hand. And in the middle of me shuffling, what happened was like I'm shuffling, and one of my cards like catches the corner of another card. And so like my cards don't riffle in like they normally do. They just kind of like throw themselves into my lap. So I catch everything. I get it all like situated, and I start to continue to shuffle, and I'm like, okay. And I'm looking around me. I'm looking in the floor. There's nothing. I don't see anything. So I continue to shuffle. I, cut my hand. I set it, present it. Guy cuts it. I take it, and I draw my 7, and I'm literally looking at my hand, and I'm 3rd in seed order. So there's Joyra, but not like the Cheerios Joyra. It's the one that like taps and will throw in like artifacts.
Yeah.
TNT, which this was actually the same TNT player that I played in like a previous tournament in Nashville. Then myself, so Xur, and then a Rogsai. So I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be lots of artifacts and other stuff cast, whatever. So I draw my 7, and I literally have like a turn 1 Rhystic Study. And I'm like, this is about to go insane. Like, and I even had follow-up plays. I can't remember what the specific follow-up was, but I was like, dude, I'm about to jam with this hand. Like, we're about to kick some serious butt. And the player that is on TNT gets up to go fill up his water bottle while everybody else is like resolving their mulligans. And as he backs out of his chair, like as he backs up, there's 2 cards laying in the floor, and they're both my cards. It's a Mystical Tutor and a Force of Will. And he goes, whose cards are those? And then I'm like, oh my God. So I pick them up, and I literally have to shuffle my hand back into the deck and redraw another, like a new 7, because like that technically what should have been cards that I potentially would have drawn for my. So I just went ahead and like, instead of them having to like ask the judge and everything, I was like, whatever, I'll just redo my mulligan. Fuck it. And so I redo the mulligan, and it's like terrible. Like no lands. I'm like, okay, I redo another mulligan. So I go second 7, nothing. 6, nothing. Just awful. 5, nothing. I'm like, so then I go to 4, and I literally kept a piece of interaction, 2 pieces of interaction, 2 lands. That's what it was. I think that sounds right. And so I'm like, whatever, I'll just play the control guy, I guess, at the table of this game. And so my first draw, I was so upset, man, but my first draw was another land. So I just like play land pass. Next, a land pass. And eventually I get to 4 lands. And I'm like, I'm literally so out of this game. Like, I've not done anything. So I'm like, I don't want to tap out and cast. Like, I don't want to just completely tap out and then, like, not be able to interact at the table here. So I'm like, okay. And so I start weighing my options. I'm like, I can just tap out and just, like, cast Xur and at least have a chance to do something. And I broke my freaking rule where I say I don't tap out. I do not tap out. And like an idiot, that's what I did. I tapped out, and I was like, I'm going to cast Xur. And the Jorah player taps Jorah, slams Jorah, like puts the 2 age counters on her, or the 2 counters, whatever they are, they go on her, and drops a Isochron Scepter. And I'm like, what is about to happen? And when it enters, they imprint a Mana Drain. And counter my Xur. And I was like... And so Xur goes back to the zone. I'm tapped out. I'm like, well, fuck. I just threw that game. But whatever, go ahead. Rogside doesn't do anything. Jorah just like starts going bananas on their turn and just can't get there. And it was really smart because they still had a little bit of mana left up. with some cards in hand.
Right.
And the player that was on TNT decided to try and like bait something, I guess, like tried to counter something. And they thought to themselves, they were like, well, they're like, I guess I could counter that. Like, I guess I could. They're like, it really wouldn't matter if you countered this thing, but like, I kind of want it to stick. So then they were willing to like activate the thing to stop it. But then what they didn't realize is like the way that they had tapped their lands and stuff, they didn't have blue for the Isochron that had like the mana drain on it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't live anymore. And they were like, okay. And so then the TNT player just untaps and just goes toss a consult and just wins. And I was like, I deserved that.
Ugh.
So I scooped it up and I proceeded to just walk over and be like, shook everybody's hands. And then I helped the guy re-sleeve his deck.
What a fun round.
Yeah, I was so sad. I was very upset. I had the hand of God and just proceeded to, through my own negligence, just fuck myself. So it is what it is. But I lost that game, and again, I deserved it. I one, I should have at least made sure that all the cards were back in my deck. That's my own problem, not somebody else's problem. So like, that's my own problem. Two, I should not have tapped out because I had 2 pieces of interaction in hand that could have stopped that combo. And instead, I got greedy. And I literally, it's like, I say to myself all the time, do not tap out to Kazler. And I just decided to do it anyway.
Well, how do you think the game would have gone different if you had called the judge over and explained, hey, we've all resolved our mulligans. And, earlier I dropped cards. I didn't realize these two were on the floor. What do we do about this?
Yeah, I think that technically was the right way to resolve that, is like you have to redo the mulligan, like shuffle back. Because they didn't make it like, oh, well, that can't be your first mulligan. Like you got to go to your second 7. They were like, just redo your first 7. And I think that was the right way that was supposed to go. Okay. But even then, if the judge had come over and been like, what do you guys want to do? I think that they probably would have been like, I don't know that the other two would have cared as much. But I know that the one person would have been like, no, he needs to redo the mulligan. And the other ones would have been like, yeah, why not? Right. So I think that rather than like make a scene out of it, I was like, whatever, I'm okay with doing that. So I just went ahead and shuffled it up and redid it. Gotcha. And again, like, I just felt like that was the right thing to do in that situation. But I was a little sad whenever I saw those cards go back in the deck. I was like, fuck. But, it's part of life, man. Yep. I should have checked the floor a little bit better, too, before I offered the cut anyways. Yeah. So that was my fault. And I even backed up and was like, nothing. And, yeah, they were just laying there.
What if the TNT player, like, it was actually, like, his? He just, like...
I got me a free torso. Yeah. I'll take it.
Have you checked Xur since then? Make sure you don't have duplicates in there.
So. Yeah, good point. No, I did count. I counted after before I did my mulligan again. I went ahead and counted everything. Yeah. And at first I was counting 99 cards or something like that. Which, like, with Xur, I counted 99. I was like, wait a minute, maybe I just like 2 of them were stuck together or something. So I went ahead and recounted, and then I counted it was 100. Okay. But yeah, at first I was like, wait a minute, what the 5 moves another card? And I'm like, yeah.
So, well, in my round 3, so this is all in seat order. So seat 1 is a Rocco. Seat 2 is a Child of Alara player. So there's another 5-color pile at this table, which I thought was interesting. And Child of Alara is also an interesting choice, but I didn't really get to see much of what he was doing throughout the game. Then in seat 3 was Josh on Kennen. And I'm like, I know how this could go. And then me at seat 4. And so we all resolve our mulligans. And in my head, I'm going, I am not going to have a game like I did the first game. So I kept a super gassed up hand. I think that whenever I got into my turn, my draw was absolutely perfect. So what I did, I kept 2 lands. And in my turn 1, I cast Mox Diamond, pitching an Otawara, played a Volcanic Island as land for the turn. Off the Diamond, cast a Delighted Halfling. Off the Volcanic, cast a Mana Vault. And my draw for the turn, I tap Mana Vault, cast Relic of Legends. And I think I already said this, but I went down to 6 cards. Yeah. After all the mulligans were resolved. And I think I had 1 card in hand, and the last card that I had was an Enduring Vitality. Dang. And I was like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Like, feel super bricked up at this point and just felt good about where I was sitting, even though I'm sitting in seat 4 again. Rocco goes into his turn and like out of nowhere, like develops this really strong board presence. And we're all just kind of like, oh shit. He's presenting a win soon. And so then it gets Child of Lara player's turn. He didn't do, I don't think in that turn he did a whole lot. It was either that or like, he did pull a crazy move off, but I don't think it was in that turn. Josh goes into his turn. I think he cast Kennen on 2, maybe, but then doesn't do much other than that. And I'm thinking, I need another land in order to cast Sisay and Enduring Vitality in the same turn. Top deck of Beseju. Look, we're cooking. So turn 2, I have a Relic of Legends, a Delighted Halfling, a Mox Diamond, Sisay, Enduring Vitality, and 2 lands. No cards left in hand. I said, fuck it, we're going this game. So it gets into turn 3. Rocco casts a Silence. And then proceeds to mess up the line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the Child of Lara player didn't have any interaction. Josh didn't have any interaction. I think eventually I found out he had like a Chain of Vapor basically, and that was like his only like source of interaction that he had. No counter spells, nothing.
What line was he going for?
He was trying to do a Felidar Guardian Kiki-Jiki line.
What did he okay.
Like he just didn't have the mana to do all of it and didn't have enough mana to like get Rocco up to get the Kiki and then start doing the infinite tokens and things like that. So he cast the Felidar and I think he cast a Jolly Balloon Man. And he also had like a Bloom Tender and like a few other dorks. Like he was in a really good position. So he attempted to win, messed up the line, passed turn. The Child of the Lara player, the only thing he does, he has a Shifting Woodlands on board, and he turns Shifting Woodlands into a copy of Necropotence that's in his graveyard. And so he rips like the top 15 trying to find answers, sculpts his hand, and passes.
Fuck yeah.
He didn't get anything. Yeah. And so then it gets to Josh. I think he tried to play something, and nothing really got stopped. I think either he played something or he passed, because the 3 of us are sitting at the table at this point going, like, we need to do something about that. This is bad. So it gets to my turn, and I think that I had enough for an activation. I think I put an activation on the stack, did something, and my draw for the turn was a Legolas's Quick Reflexes.
Sick.
I think that's pretty much all that happened. So, no, I held up all my mana. That's what I did. I held up all my mana. I had the Legolas's Quick Reflexes and waited to put activations on the stack going into the Rocco player's turn. And so we all present ways to try to stop him, but he just had too much mana, was able to cast Rocco over and over again. Like, I think Josh was able to Chain of Vapor something. The Child of Lara player was able to remove the Kiki-Jiki. I was able to put an activation on the stack, get Cultist of Absolute, and still in response to the activation of Kiki, I cast Legolas's Quick Reflexes to untap Sisay, which is now a 6/6 at this point, and I tapped her down for like a blue mana or whatever because of the relic, and then was able to kill part of the line. He just had so much mana that he still had Jolly Balloon Man out. We had completely, like, I think we had somehow exiled the Kiki-Jiki, and then Felidar was gone. He had enough to get Village Bellringer out with the Bloom Tender still on board, so he was able to Jolly Balloon Man, make a copy of Village Bellringer, untap all his creatures, be able to continue doing that, generating infinite mana and infinite Village Bellringers that had haste, and swung out.
Damn.
So that was how round 3 went for me. That was a game where it was just like I'm tired of like I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, so I just went for it, and especially sitting in seat 4. But it was like I think that I don't want to chalk up the whole day, even though I felt like it's very easy to what the seat order was. I think that if I had done that sitting at seat 1 or seat 2, I probably would have came out on top of that game. I don't think anyone could have stopped me, but sitting at seat 4 and the Rocco player being able to go into seat 1 and the start that he had, I think that it makes a good point for how the seating and the priority order can really mess with the game at times.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. You good to go game 4?
Mm-hmm. Let's go game 4.
So my game 4, there was a Lumra in seat 1, which is just like a big ass like green bear.
Big bears.
Big bear. Then there was the only blue farm player at the entire tournament.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the only blue farm player, and I just happened to get in a pod with him, of course. And then Keurig, which it wasn't just a Keurig. It was, I don't know if people know Abby, but she's like really good with Keurig. She ended up going to the like the Top Deck Invitational, and she's really good on Keurig. And then there was me on Zer, seat 4. So I thought that this one was really funny because the Tim McCron player actually had played Zer. So when I sat down with Zer, he was just immediately like, fuck yeah, like, let's go. This is sick. Like, and he got really hype about it. And then he said something about Zer always being like a turn too slow. He was like, that's the only thing that sucks about Zer is I always feel like he's just a turn too slow. And then where everybody resolves their mulligans, and I had a Gemstone Caverns, and I said, I think I fixed it. But yeah, I kept a pretty interactive hand with this one, and I think I had an early value piece. I can't remember what specifically I kept. I wish I would have taken a little bit better notes as far as that goes. I think it was like an early like S% null potentially. But I had like just an early value engine down. So that, no, I take that back. I do remember what I kept. It was not an S%. I had the gemstone and I played a land, and I cast Lotho, and then I think I dropped a 0 rock so that I had a treasure, so I wasn't tapped out. And that made it to where like I just had Lotho as like my value engine piece essentially, and then I just let everybody kind of pass the turn, let it do its thing, and Lotho was getting me a shit ton of treasures. Like it really put in work. Like it was crazy. There was no Bowmaster on the table to kill it, thankfully. Like everything was going really well. I was in the driver's seat this whole game, like legit. I had interaction for literally everybody, like the entire game. I was addressing stuff. I had multiple. I was able to eventually go like Dark Ritual into like a Necropotence and start going like value Necro. I guess they thought I was just going to jam it, but I was like, no, like I just was going value Necro. I was ripping like 10 cards off the top and like sculpting really good hands. And I mean, I set myself up for a really good chance to win. And I think where I absolutely fucked up was that I got way too tunnel visioned on the Ad Nauseam plan. There was a moment where I think they started to realize that like I was doing a lot.
Right.
So I had a Dispel in my hand, and that just hits instants.
Yeah.
Right? So the person that was in Blue Farm tried to, before it got to their turn, they tried to cast a Enlightened Tutor, and I knew they were going to go get Underworld Breach. So I was like, no, we're not letting that happen. So I went ahead and just like Dispelled, because I figured like Kirk's not going to be casting a bunch of like spells, like instants. They're going to be casting more creatures. I had a Force of Will in hand, so I was like, I'm good. I'm chilling. Everything's good. So then I killed the thing. I think I ripped a couple. Or no, so yeah, something happened. I drew into I remember I drew into like an opposition agent at 1.2 off of something that had happened, because I did have a value piece down. Lomra just decides to fucking go for the win. And I was like baffled at how this deck went, but like it was crazy. Like it would sack all its lands and it would do some crazy loops. And then it would essentially, what would happen is it would just, it never was searching. It was just milling, but it was just going to like basically sack all of its lands, and then it would find ways to like get enough mana to recast Lomra, keep the process going, and then certain lands would drain out the table every time that they were coming into play or getting tapped. So it was essentially just going to go for it. So I watched like a cycle or two of this happen, and I realized this was going to continue to happen. And I realized that if I could stop it right then I would have a way to like just completely, shut it down. So I was like, he's just going to go for it. Well, Carrick didn't have anything for it. Blue Farm didn't have anything for it. So I actually had to go Force of Will and stop this, or else we were just going to lose right then. So I stopped it. So my Force of Will was gone, unfortunately. Blue Farm decides that they're going to try and go Intuition. And I'm like, man, okay, like, what's happening here? Well, then Carrick lets it out that they've got an opposition agent, but they're like, I don't really want to waste my opposition agent right now. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, why would you not? Like, I'm so baffled. Like, I'm amazed. So then they did something that required them to essentially like pitch the opposition agent to try and kill something else, or I don't remember what exactly happened. So then I cast my opposition agent, and I went and got 3 cards from that deck. Well, this is where I wish that, again, I would have thought better of this, because I went ad nause in my mind. I was like, oh, ad nauseum, because I've got the other piece to do the ad nause plan.
Right.
When in reality, I could have literally just went Thassa, Consult, and then maybe like, Thassa, Consult, maybe something to just stop, like a Grand Abolish or something like that.
I think I remember walking over whenever that happened and seeing you grab the ad nause.
I got
the Grand Abolisher,
Abolisher, and Force of Will.
And the Force of Will. And I remember at one point, I think at one point you had to cast the Force of Will. Yeah. And the Blue Farm player was just, you can say what happens. So that was funny.
So then there was the Abby. She had 2 cards in hand. So like they passed. It went to her. And I mean, if I would have just been smart, I had the win right there.
Yeah,
I was perfectly fine. And she tried to kill the Oppo, and I was like, why are you killing the Oppo? Like, something's going on. So I'm thinking, like, it's going to stop her from doing something crazy, like, during my turn to, like, fuck me up. So I'm thinking, like, okay, I've got to save this Oppo then. Like, something's happening. So I just decided, like, okay, fuck it. I'll stop the... I'll go ahead and just cast the Force of Will, stop the killing of the Oppo, and we're good. So her last card in hand was like Pestilence, and I didn't even know what that card was. So then she starts draining, like paying life to kill the creatures and drain the table out. Hits me with Carrick, so I'm down to 1 life at this point. And I'm like, man, I really fucking shit the bed right there. Hell yeah. So then she basically told me, rather than killing me, she was like, I've got you on, I basically have you on at gunpoint, so don't fucking act stupid. And I was like, yes ma'am, gotcha, roger that, So then it comes to my turn, and I decide that I've got to make actions. So I'm like, okay. So I cast Wishclaw Talisman, which used up some of my mana. And I'm like, because I was really just wanting to go Grand Abolisher immediately, but obviously she'd fucking kill me, so I couldn't do that. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I cast a Wishclaw Talisman, and she's like, what are you going to do with that? And I was like, well, I'll gladly give it to you if you would like it. You can just use it on your turn. And that made her not use Pestilence, so she kept me alive. So she was like, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. And I was like, okay. So then I pay another mana, and I give her the Wishclaw Talisman, and I go and do my search. And I'm like, is everybody okay with the search? And then, of course, the Blue Farm player is like, yeah, but what if he goes and gets that white card that, like, keeps him from dying or whatever, Angel's Grace? And I was like, what card? And he said, Angel's Grace. And I was like, that would be really good right now, wouldn't it? And he was like, yeah, it would be really good right now. She's like, I don't care. Like, go ahead and do your search. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then the Blue Farm player is like freaking out, but he like doesn't have any responses to it. I'm like, do you have any responses to the search? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay. So I go to do my search, and then I add my card to hand. And he's like, yeah, but I just think like, blah, blah, blah. And he like starts talking. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to cast Angel's Grace. She's like, oh, well, I'll just kill you in response. And I was like, no, it has split second. And she's like, what the fuck, So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, boom, dude, I can cast the Grand Abolisher, and then I can cast Ad Nauseam. I'm good. Okay. Yeah. And I even have counters in my hand. So I'm like, okay, I've got counter spells in my hand. I'm good. Like we're okay here. So then she goes to, she can't do anything. Well, then we get into this talk about how like Angel's Grace doesn't work with Ad Nause and all this stuff, and how like Phyrexian Unlife does, but Angel's Grace doesn't. And I'm like, no, I was like, it's not going to stop me from going into negative life. Like, you're right there, but I cannot lose the game this turn. So I'll just essentially die at the end of the turn when this wears off. And like, I'll just essentially like die, like to like whatever, it'd be like state-based actions or whatever. But I was like, but it will make me go into the negative, but I'm not paying life. Like, you can't pay life that you don't have, but it doesn't matter. I'm just revealing and taking that much like life loss essentially. Right. So, you know, it's not damage, but I'm losing that much life based off of the mana value of the card. So I can just do that until I add my whole deck to hand. And they're like, no, that's not how it works. And then the head judge just happened to be right there. So as the guy's shaking his head no, I point to the head judge, and the head judge is doing this. and so then they get into like a little bit of a discussion, and the guy's like, no, that's how that works. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, regardless of whether that's how it works or not, I look and I don't have enough mana to go Abolisher. And I think I had 6 mana and I needed 5 for the Abolisher, or I needed 7. So I was like, fuck. So I was like, I've kind of shit the bed here. But I was like, whatever. So I go and I cast the Ad Nauseam. Nobody has anything except for the Blue Farm player. He has, because I got to see his hand, but he has like a Fierce Guardianship. And I'm like, fuck yeah, we're good. I go and I miscast his Fierce Guardianship. And I'm like, cool. I'm about to add my whole deck to hand. I'm going to drop some Zero Rocks. I'm going to win this fucking game. And then I fucking forget that he has an LED. And he cracks the LED for the 3 mana he needs to pay for the miscast so that he doesn't lose. And I was like, man, that really fucking sucks. And so I just proceeded to pass my turn. As soon as it, like it does its thing, it gets back, like the Lumber player can't do, like at this point it gets to the Lumber player's turn, and Abby actually says, I'll offer a draw right now. And I'm like, please, for the love of God, let me have this draw. And the Lumber player goes, I want to see if I can get I want to get another turn. I want to see what happens. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to get another turn. Keurig's going to win. Like, that's what the deck does. You're not going to get another turn. Just take the draw. And he's like, no, I think like I want to get another turn. And I'm like, dude, don't be greedy right now, please. Like, just take the draw. Take the draw. And he's like, no, I really think like if I get another turn, I think I'd be good. And I was like, you're not going to get another turn. Like, I don't know how to explain this. Like, just please take the draw. Like, come on, bro. And he's like, no, I want another turn. I'm like, fuck. And then the Blue Farm player starts talking to him, and he's like, dude, just take the draw. Like, let's all take the draw. Come on. And she's like, this is the only time I'm offering this. And the guy goes, no, I don't want to take the draw. I want to get another turn. So then Blue Farm fucking draws its Delny. He tries to hit me, and she wanted the search off of the obvious, so she didn't kill me. But when she realized he was going to make treasures and do stuff, she was like, fuck it, I'm just going to pay life into pestilence, kill him. So I die, I take my wish claw. I'm like, fuck, I'm out of it. Yeah. So then, of course, like whenever I die and she hands me back my wish claw, like I go and I like go to extend my hand to like say, hey, good game. And I'm like, draw. And she like pulls her hand away. And she starts laughing. So then everybody starts cracking up. So then Blue Farm does nothing. It gets back to her turn, and then she just proceeds to like win. Like, she just like goes through the combo, does the win. And then at that time she was like, yeah, I think I get it. And then the Lumber player goes, so draw? And she said, no. So that game is the one game that like, that is the shit of nightmares. Like, that is what I consider like clutching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like, I shit the bed so bad on that one, and I deserved every second of it.
Well, whenever I kind of interjected a little bit there earlier, like what I was saying is I walked up and something had happened in the interaction where I think you had cast the Blue Farm player's Force of Will. It's something happened, and I forgot exactly what it was, but he started celebrating and goes, fuck, that was my card.
Yes. That's...
That was what I was going to interject with there. Not necessarily spoiling what will happen throughout that. But I walked over there. I was like, that's fucking funny.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad you had a good round 4. Like, you tried.
Yeah.
And like you presented a win. You said you were in the driver's seat the whole time. My game was nothing like that whatsoever.
Was this where you went seat 1?
This is the only game I went seat 1.
Okay, I'll let you tell it. I'm sorry.
This is the only game I went to seat 1, and I mulliganed down to 3.
Yeah.
It feels real bad.
Were you on Rog's side or were you on Sisay?
So, yeah, I was still on Sisay. So, the order is me in seat 1, Kenan in seat 2, which I'll get to that one in a second. A Mothman in seat 3. I'll really get to that one in a second. And Krinko. And I'm sitting
which
there.
Krinko?
mob boss.
Okay,
So
okay.
he's trying to just jam goblins, make a bunch of tokens, things like that. And I'm looking and like there's some decent vibes going on right now. I'm just like, okay, I played against Kennen before and the whole day, so I know what to expect. Mothman, we've played in our local meta, so I know what to expect there. I've played Krinko before, I know what to expect. I even make the comment, I was like, this is gonna be the fun pod. And like I get everyone just like start laughing and like things like that. But my hands that I'm having to look at, my first one I think was like 4 lands and I didn't have a play until turn 3. And I was like, I need to be faster than Kennen. I'm not really worried about the other 2, especially with the Krinko player. He's like literally like jamming his cards together like this. And like the tops of his Ultra Pro sleeves are like coming off and like rippled off the top. And I'm just like, I'm not worried there.
Yeah. What is it you said? You were like, I'm pretty sure he is a goblin.
I did say that. But like it was funny. And so then I go to my second 7. I'm like, fuck, this is a 1 land hand. I can't do anything with this. I go to 6. It was okay, but I'm like, this isn't like, it's an okay, but it's not a great start. I go to my 5. There's 2 dorks in the opening hand and 2 lands. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. The problem is that it was a Delighted Halfling, a Noble Hierarch, an Ancient Tomb, and a Gaia's Cradle. And not a single green card other than that in my opening hand, nor a rock or anything to cast said creatures. So I'm having to go down again. I go to 4, no lands. Fuck me. So I go to 3 and I keep a Tundra, a Chromox, and a Noble Hierarch. Feels real bad.
Yeah.
And then proceeded, like, I drew into things that kind of got me back into the game a little bit. However, this was not an average Kennen player.
Mm-hmm.
This Kennen player wasn't running Thrasios at all in his deck. This Kennen player on turn 2, but on turn 1, he dropped a bunch of shit. Turn 2, I think he was able to put an activation on the stack and gets the Ulamog that whenever you cast it, you can exile target permanent and has Annihilator 4. So I think it's like the OG Ulamog one. And I'm looking at that and going, fuck. And I'm looking at the Mothman and Krinko player. I'm like, do either of you have any ways of dealing with this? Here's where the Mothman player comes into play. So after that happened, I found out, and the Kennen player had made a comment about this, like after turn 1 or turn 2, he goes, I think it's a precon. And I looked at the Mothman player and I was like, are you playing a precon right now? And he goes, yes. Just straight face. No, and I'm like, oh no.
What was it that you said though? Where like I remember you telling me this story, and you said that you said he played he played a land, and then he played on turn 2. He played another land, and the one guy said, "I think he's playing a precon," and you're like, "Surely not." And then he tapped and he cast an arcane signet, and it had the Fallout symbol on it, and you said, "Fuck, he's playing a precon."
Well, he confirmed it. So yeah, that's exactly what was kind of going through my mind at that point. And then gets the Krinko player's turn, and he goes, "I'm going to try to save you." And I think the reason he knew that, he was like, precon, Eldrazi Titan, I can't really put goblins down right now. Sisei is the only way of like potentially stopping what's happening on board. So he goes, I'm going to try and save you. So in his main phase, he casts Chaos Warp, targeting the Ulamog to try to shuffle it back in. And I'm like, cool, that's fine. That's awesome. Thank you. You probably just saved us the game. Kennen player shuffles it back in, flips a Gilded Lotus off the top. I go into my turn, and I think that I had Sisei out and like my own Kennen. Like I was able to build back. Oh, I had my own Kennen because I had a Sakashima out.
Oh, okay.
And so I copied the other Kennen. And so I had Sisei at a 4/4. I had the copy of Kennen. I had the Noble Hierarch down. I drew into something else. I think a Finale, which was one of my includes for the day. But I pitched it to the Chrome Mox, so I could cast the Noble Hierarch. So I'm getting back into this game after having to come down to 3. And so I go to pass turn. Kennen player puts an activation on the stack because now he has enough mana for another Kennen flip. I tell you what, he puts the Kozilek into play that when you cast it, you draw 4 cards, and then it also has Annihilator 4.
Yeah.
So now we have another Shuffle Titan that has Annihilator 4 and is coming my way down. He has the Gilded Lotus, which is enough to do whatever he wants to at this point in the game. What do you do with that? So he like untaps, instantly swings at me. I had to sack my lands, my Chrome Mox, and I think the Noble Hierarch, and I keep Sisay and like the Kennen. And I'm just like, I'm out of this game now. And I think in that same turn, after he basically takes me out, he looks at the Mothman, he looks at the Krinko, he puts an activation on the stack, he gets a Hullbreaker Horror off the flip, and then proceeds, and he says, I don't have Thrasios. So there's no, and I may have missed something. I think he was able to, like, he got the Basalt Monolith down, he had the infinite colorless mana, he was able to flip a Hullbreaker, he started doing the bouncing loop to generate colored mana, and his line was instead drawing through his deck with Thrasios, and I don't think he had Tidespout Tyrant either. So he was looping the Kozilek and the Ulamog cast triggers and with the Hullbreaker Horror to exile all of our permanents and draw through his deck. And we all said, screw it, you got it. Like,
that's insane.
There's nothing we can do. Like, you can literally play everything and we can't do anything. So I think we just gave it to him. And at the end of it, the dude turns to the Mothman player and goes, I think you're playing in the wrong event. And the Mothman player proceeds to just sit there quietly and just like stare into his soul. So that is how round 4 turned out. And I think that is I almost want to say that round for me was definitely the example of like what happens when you mulligan too aggressively.
Yeah.
But I also felt like it was a moment where like I don't think I could wait around till turn 3 to cast things and just like start play land with Kennen on board. Not knowing what the deck was truly trying to do, it's Kennen. If he gets it out on 1 and builds up his board presence, turn 3 is too late. And so I was trying to continue to go down more and more in my cards. And I think just the unluck of the draw is what got me that day.
What a world where Kennen is faster than other decks.
I know, dude. Kennen came out on top a lot. Throughout this event, and then I know that we have the next round to go into, so I'll save it for that.
This is gonna be insane. So my game 5 was actually so this is funny, so they, instead of taking, and I just think this is hilarious, rather than taking table 1, which was like the best table, and having them be on the stream at the end, they just got like the table of absolute goons together. So they pulled us. We were table 7. So they pulled us, and it was Childs of Alara, the one that you played earlier in seat 1, Selvala, which was Leo in seat 2, and actually our seat 2 dropped. So then they were like, do you know anybody that wants to play? So I run outside and I come and yell at both of y'all, and Leo's like, I'm coming, and he like runs into his deck.
Yeah, then I'm behind him. I go, you motherfucker, I wanted to play.
Yeah. And then seat 3 is the Winota player, the really nice guy that you were talking about, and then seat 4 is me. So this is another one of those where I mulligan, and I could have kept an early hand. I think it was my second 7. I could have kept an Esper Sentinel. And I'm looking around at the whole table, and I'm like, this is a very creature-heavy thing. I don't think that this is going to draw me hardly any cards, if any. And not to mention, Selvala makes a ton of mana. I'm not going to get... I mean, they'll easily pay for it. I'm looking at the Winota. They're not even going to be casting stuff. They're just going to be flipping stuff off the top. And the stuff that they're casting are like these little 0 and like cheap creatures. Like, I'm not getting any draws off of this. So in my brain, I'm like, I've got to mulligan more aggressive. And I end up going down to literally 3 lands and a Vampiric Tutor. So that was what I kept. And so on my turn, Like everybody does their thing on my turn. I literally go vamp tutor, or I go ahead and I play my land, and then I just like wait to see what's going to happen. So like I didn't even crack my fetch because I wanted to make sure that like I didn't need to like use the vamp tutor to do something. You know, I mean, not that I could have really done anything, but I just wanted to like make sure. And so then it does come around. I crack it. I go and I get I think like Underground Sea, and I cast the. I go and I get the. I use the fetch to then, or I use the tutor to then go and get like a Mystic Remora, which I should have at that point just kept the Esper Sentinel. I mean, it wouldn't have been any different, but so then I'm like, whatever. So I just play a Mystic Remora for my turn. I play a land, I pass. And then my next turn, I draw, and I draw into Necropotence. And I look over, and at this point, some stuff had happened, you know, like things were going on, whatever, you know, blah, blah, blah. This person had put down, forget what the card is called, but it basically is one of like the enchantments to where you can only play one non-creature spell a turn, and then they can crack it to like deal damage, but for some reason I just can't think of what it's called. So I'm like, okay, like, you know.
Was it High Noon?
Yeah, maybe that was it. So
it's like a white enchantment that's
with a red activation.
But it has a red activation.
Yes. So that's down on the table, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, this is kind of weird. So like, I'm in a weird spot because I'm like, if I do anything too early, I'm gonna really put myself in a weird spot. And if I do anything, if I address this, then I knew that Leo was gonna just like have a field day, because Leo early like had dropped he had already used like the Urza Saga to go and get like the Dreadnought or whatever, and then like tap to make like 13 mana or 12 mana, and then he proceeded to like draw a shit ton of cards and sculpt a nice hand. So I'm like, if Leo gets to just cast a lot of creatures here, like, or gets to cast a lot of spells, like, we're just fucked. So like I can't really do anything here. So then I'm like, okay, like I can let this fish stick around, or I can just like let it die. Oh, I haven't drawn it yet at that point. So like I did keep the fish around. So I knew when it was coming back to my turn, I was like, I can either pay for the fish and try to like bait this out, or just let it die, and I tap out to cast this Necropotence, and we'll just see what happens. So it gets back to my turn, I let the fish die, and they go, oh, they let it die. And I play another land. So I've got 4 mana open. And so I drop the Necropotence, just hard cast, you know. And I look, and nobody had any responses for it. So I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. I'm about to just like throw as much life as I can into this thing, even though I know Winota's about to beat my ass. So I'm like, whatever. So I just start going, and I get like a ton of stuff off of the Necro. And I think I pumped like 15 life into it. I sculpted a really good 7. I'm like, okay, I'm not in this game right now, but at least like I'm more into it than I was. So then like Child of Alara comes down, other stuff happens, like Leo still kind of kept under wraps. And then I realized that, I can't remember what happened. Like they had swung, like, so the Winota player finally started getting some Winota activations, and the Child of Alara player could have done something to address the issue, but they chose not to. They wanted to see what happened. And I was like, you're going to get hit for a lot of damage if you let these things happen. And even Leo made a comment. He was like, you may want to just go ahead and like, because he had a way to sack the Child of Alara, just blow up everything. And he goes, it sucks because we're going to lose all of our creatures. I would lose my Necropotence, whatever. He's like, you know, we're going to lose all of our stuff. But if Boromir comes down, the Child of Alara doesn't do shit, because like it makes everything indestructible anyway. Right. And on top of that, like creatures that do come down are going to be indestructible. So he's like, no, I just want to see what happens. And he asked him, he's like, who are you swinging them at? And he was like, well, I'm swinging them at you, you know, instead of me, who has Necropotence, because the guy was kind of like talking a little too much. And so then I'm just like not making myself a threat. I'm just like, you know, just minding my own fucking business. And so then he's like, okay. So then he flips, very first flip, Boromir. And then Leo goes, and there we go. And then the next flip was Rick's Steadfast Leader, which buffs the creatures and makes them bigger. And then the next flip was something. I can't remember. Oh, I can't remember what it was. Damn it. I just can't remember what it was. Saved my life for some reason. So then he takes a ton of damage. They take a ton of damage. And I'm just sitting here kind of looking. And I'm like, there's enough on board right now to like kill me next turn. and this isn't good. Like I'm the necropotence guy, so like they're gonna kill me. So like I've got to figure out what to do here. So I kind of asked him, I'm like, do you want to do anything to address this? Because again, we're only casting one spell a turn. Winota's already gotten crazy. Even if you try to blow it up, like this is just too far gone at this point. Do you want to do anything about this? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. So I get to my turn, I tap, and I cast Toxic Deluge, and I put it to 6 because I think that was like the biggest, like toughness wise. So I was like, whatever, I'll just Deluge. And they're like, damn, even if I crack Boromir, that's not going to save me. And I was like, no, unfortunately, it's not. And it was enough to kill Childs of Alara too, so it was going to blow up everything.
Right.
And I'm like, fuck it, I'm cool with that, because then I get a draw on my turn. So then in response to that, I pay some more life to get some like necro stuff for my instep, and I'm like, letting them do their thing. So then they have no responses for it. It happens, everything kind of dies. And then I remember I had a... What exactly happened? I remember when I went to sculpt my hand, I do remember I had like a Dark Rit, and I had Thassa, and I had a Wish Claw. And I was like, okay. And I remember I had a Ranger Captain of Eos. That was the other thing. I remember I had Ranger Captain. So I was sitting there thinking to myself, and I was like, okay, the whole board's gone. So the Child of Alara player sets up a like Sylvan Library or something. Like I don't remember what happened, but he had a ton of open mana. Leo recasts Selvala, which is not good. And then this player that was on Winota decides to play I forget which one it is, Imperial Recruiter, and then goes and gets Magus of the Moon. And I'm like, okay. And I just, in that moment, I kind of thought to myself, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure Leo wins on his turn because he sculpted a nice hand and he just needed to be able to cast a bunch of stuff. So I'm like, Leo wins on his turn. If he doesn't, this person drops Magus of the Moon and then shuts all of us off except for Leo, who has Selvala to make all of his mana.
Right.
And he has basics. So I try to like politic with the guy for a second. I'm like, you don't want to cast that on your turn. And he was like, why not? And I was like, because he is still open to like a ton of mana. And he was like, he only has one basic. And I'm like, yes, but he needs 1 green to then tap Selvala to make more green. And he was like, but he doesn't have any other creatures, so I'll be fine. And I'm like, okay. And I knew Leo was going to do some shenanigans on his turn anyway. So I'm like, okay. So basically what I have to do here is I was like, I could cast the Wish Claw and I could cast the Ranger Captain of Eos. And then I would have to wait a turn cycle to then try and win. But the problem was I knew the Magus was coming down, so I wasn't going to have the mana to then do the combo.
Right.
So I was like, this is useless. Like I'm not going to be able to do anything. I don't have rocks or nothing. So I'm like, I'm fucked. So then I'm like, okay. So then I could just try to go for the win right here and just see what happens. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to try and go for the win. Fuck it. So I cast the Dark Rit. They're like, cool. Drop the Wish Claw, give it to the Winota player, and I'm like, there you go. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna try and go for it. Fuck it. So I go and I get the consultation. I cast Thassa, and the person like has the Power Blast or whatever for it, and I'm like, cool, whatever. Like, I was like, I'm just gonna cast this Ranger Captain of Eos with whatever mana I have left. So I basically, again, very irresponsible. I tapped out. I'm like, pass turn. Because like I knew Leo was going to get it anyways. So then the guy goes and like does nothing really with his turn. Goes to Leo. Leo just fucking combos off like crazy because he plays like the land that copies the Dreadnought in the...
he makes a copy of Phyrexian Dreadnought with Shifting Woodlands.
Yes, and then proceeds to tap Selvala, makes a shit ton of mana, filters through his deck until he gets Walking Ballista with infinite mana, plays the Ballista, kills the whole table. And I'm like, yeah, I knew this was how that was going to go. And like I just kind of had to go for it. I didn't really I felt like I didn't really have an option.
Right.
And I wish it was the same thing. I wish I wouldn't have mulliganed down so aggressively like I did, because I did have an Esper Sentinel and I would have had interaction, and I could have I think that was probably the moral of the event is like, just don't be so fucking aggressive with your mulligans. Like, be okay with being just a teensy bit slow. Like, it is okay, because like I may not have a super fast start, but there are other people there to also interact with the table. Don't feel like you have to have all of the answers. You know what I mean? And so that I felt like that was kind of the moral for me in that. But yeah, so Leo ended up winning, and then he got the interview and everything. And I'm currently, I think I am now. I think the only time I've ever beat Selvala in a tournament setting was my very first tournament game of cEDH. I beat Selvala in my very first game ever, and every game since then I've lost to Leo in a tournament setting. So that is how my game 5 went. How did your game 5 go?
Well, my game 5 was pretty easy.
Okay.
Because I got the chance to put all my stuff away and just walk around and hang out. So I got the buy in round 5. Yeah. But I think the funny part about it is that it made Josh sweat in his last round against a table that was not required to be as sweaty as he was, because going into the last round, he didn't have a win. He had 2 draws, so he had 2 points. Because I got the bye, I got 5 points automatically. And I think in his mind, the whole time he's going, I'm not going to let Chase get more points than me. Because he got a fucking bye. And so he did end up winning his last round, putting him at 7 points. And he actually placed 16th overall because of that. But he came up to me afterwards. He was like, there's no fucking way I was going to let you have more points than me whenever you did get a win the whole time. So that is how my round 5 went, was kind of hoping that he didn't get the win. But I think he also got paired against the Mothman and the Krinko player, and then Crick that I had played against earlier in the day. So that was fun. And then we proceeded to leave. We found a sketchy restaurant, and then we immediately left there. We went to this pizza place. It was pretty awesome. We're going to have to go back again next time we were there. Now, I did do a little bit of research following the event, because we didn't watch like the cut. We didn't watch the top 4, anything like that. But I had previously gotten into the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area Discord and just trying to figure out, like, you know, who all was going to be there and like maybe what some of the decks that we're going to be playing. And I looked back at some of the comments. The top 4 was Glarb, which was interesting. And we didn't mention this earlier, but the name of the event was Glarb's Gauntlet. And I think it was the only Glarb player that was there. I don't remember the seed order or anything about that, but it was him and 3 Kennons. One of which, the one that came in second place for the event, was the one that was playing the Eldrazi Shuffle Titans. He came in second overall at the event. I don't know what, I didn't play with one of them, but then one of the other Kennen players in the pod was the first Kennen player I played with for the day. So going back and seeing that kind of made me feel a little bit better, that like losing to all these Kennen pilots and seeing how much Kennen there was, at least I lost to 2 of them.
Do you remember what the other one? I bet the other one was the one that I lost to in the first game.
Maybe.
Probably.
Maybe. Glarb won it.
That's funny. Glarb's
Glarb won the event for that one. So I don't know. I'm hoping that I'm kind of going back and seeing some of the deck list on that. I think that it ended up being like he was able to crack a Doomsday pile, and he just proceeded to win right there. Which, I mean, props to him, because even though it's one more color, having to fight through 3 different Kennons, like, that's rough. So that's how that one turned out. And we had 38 players total, and they kept it a 1K event. So I think he ended up walking away with like $500 or something like that.
Good for him, dude.
Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. So
this is what I get for talking shit.
This is what we all get for talking shit.
I hate 2-mana commanders.
So many Kennons. And of course, out of all of us, Josh is the one that had the most points. Him playing Kennan, I guess that's just a sign we need to switch to Kennan. That's not, no, don't do it.
No. I wasn't contemplating. I was disappointed that you said it. And then you said no, and I was like, never mind. I'm not disappointed anymore.
So, Other than that, I think there was a lot to learn. I know that I've already gone back into cEDH. Like one of I've retooled it in a way where I'm putting some pieces that I feel stronger, more confident in. I actually took out the Iorith, Marvin, and Asika line.
Nice.
Because that's one that I tried out. I've only gotten it off once. I think Marvin is a good card, but Iorith feels really dead a lot of the times in the chain. Asika is good, but man, Enduring Vitality is just better.
Yeah.
I feel like, I can tutor for Asika, but like if there are games sometimes where I don't have a lot of legendaries out.
Yeah.
And she's only applicable to that. Whereas Enduring, if it sticks, we're jamming.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that is the one thing. Like, this is just off topic, but I do think that is the one weird thing where like cEDH sits in like this really weird spot where it's nice that you have the win available like in the zone. She's also just, you can win at instant speed, so that's really, really good. But it's the fact of like you can't put too much stock into like just accruing a ton of mana, because then it's like you said, somebody's going to win out from underneath you out of nowhere and you're not going to have any interaction for it.
Right.
If you draw too many cards, then you start to draw your combo pieces, and that's not what you want to be doing. You want them in the deck so that you can just tutor chain them out so that they can't be countered. So that's kind of unfortunate. It's just, I feel like a lot of things that deck wants to be doing, it's fighting against each other. I think that obviously Dockside made it to where like you could win much more clean and efficiently and like kind of blow up out of nowhere.
Right.
So I do think, I didn't think it until the tournament, but I do see what you're saying. Like cEDH is just kind of in like an odd spot right now.
Right.
And I think she'll eventually get figured out, but I do see why like it'll just take some time.
Yep. So other than that, I think that's pretty much how the tournament went.
Yeah.
We laid it all out there, and I have nothing else to say. I'm just hoping that the next event that we're able to both go to, same good vibes, same good place, same good food without the sketchy restaurant that we went to first time. But hopefully we'll be reporting on much better results for both of us.
Dude, that cookie was so good.
Oh
my God. The pizza was good.
I had to eat Josh's cookie.
Oh, I bet you did.
I did. I liked it.
There you go.
Don't tell him I said that.
No, I won't. The internet will. No,
I mean, other than that, do you have anything else for the tournament or anything like that?
Like I said, I'm still trying to. I still have the same goal. I want to top Reserve at some point. That's like my biggest goal. But other than that, man, like just gonna keep grinding, keep understanding the deck, keep learning, and taking advice from people that know the game better than I do, and just trying to get better. But
I mean, with that being said, thank you all so much for continuing to watch us and kind of following along on our journey in this. And, if there's anything that maybe throughout our recap that we missed, or you're like, oh, why didn't you do this line or things like that, feel free to let us know in the comments. But other than that, as always,
go play some cEDH.